Welcome to the Quinoa podcast today, everybody. We're again on YouTube and on all the big major podcast platforms. And today we've got Dr. Wayne with us. Dr. Wayne, how are you doing?
I'm doing well, thank you.
So after our huge discussion about all different types of coffee, do you want to tell people who you are and what you do?
Yes, I've had a brilliant career as a teacher, and that has meant that I've been fortunate to be in all the different grade levels, from the wee ones to adolescents to college to graduate school and dissertations and doctoral students. And people always ask, which do you like the best? And I say yes. And it really doesn't matter the age, it matters more about people showing up and having a real meeting, having a real exchange. And it's been fabulous because I've been able to interact and look for the teachable moment, which to me is very exciting in education. So I bring that educator's mindset to understanding and appreciating mindfulness.
So with everything that's going on at the minute and everything that everyone's going through, how do you think that mindfulness can help us have a better day? Because we were talking before about how you can end up having a really, really bad day, but if you use mindfulness, you can turn it into a positive day. And I didn't actually believe that. So I'd love to know what the deal is with it.
So I have spent much time at the university teaching pre-service teachers how to teach. And there's a lot of emphasis on classroom management. And part of it is just managing books and papers and whatnot, but so much of it is discipline. And the discipline of trying to herd 30 children is like herding kittens. So it's a lot easier if everyone is focused on the same thing, not on me as the teacher, but on the material. However, if you've not had a good night, you've had nightmares, or you haven't had a decent breakfast, or your mother yelled at you, you're bringing something to the school that's not making you ready to learn. So a wise teacher needs to know that, as opposed to yelling at the student for not paying attention. So one of the things I did when I taught elementary school is to meet and greet students at the door. Sometimes it's a formal thing, shaking hands or a high five, but I always looked in their eyes and say, tell me something funny. If they could tell me something funny, they were here. If they couldn't, then we would have a conversation later. Before I started my lesson, I wanted to have those 30 kids being in class. Their beingness was in class. That's an act of mindfulness. Now, it might have taken 10 minutes. However, I didn't have to spend 10 minutes yelling at them later on in the morning. It worked.
I think there's so much that we can learn from kids and mindfulness and the tactics that you take into the classroom as well, because it's like you say, when you go into a classroom, there's a huge amount of stuff you need to do to try and herd 30 kids and then teach them something at the end of the day. So you might actually think, well, somebody that's sat in an office maybe might not have these challenges and might not need mindfulness, but maybe that's not the case. What do you think?
You know, mindfulness is getting a bad rap in some places because folks will say, I'm always here. But often they're on automatic pilot and they don't know they're on automatic pilot. And mindfulness helps you look at what is happening here in the moment, not focusing too much on whatever happened last night, good or bad, or whatever you want to happen in the future, good or bad. It's focusing on right here now. What is in front of you? How are you feeling? What are you experiencing? And they call that meta awareness. And that can be taught to kids as young as 5 or 6 years old. And when they do, they're bringing more of themselves to the enterprise called learning. It makes for a much richer classroom and a dialogue. So that's exciting.
It's do you have to do things like meditation, or can mindfulness be done just on its own?
We're getting into a raw nerve. Mindfulness, at least in a modern context, came from people who were meditators. And what meditation is focusing on the moment. We have to be careful in a public sphere not to confuse religion with education. So I choose not to use the word meditation, although all of my techniques point towards meditation. I talk about quiet time. I talk about inner quiet. I have my students do a mandala. So it's a piece of paper with an ornate construction, and they have to use colored pencils, not markers, because you can go too fast, but you have to color all this stuff. And I do too. It calms the room, especially after a recess. So, yes, meditation is quite important, but I'm very careful about my choice of words, especially with some parents who might take offense.
So when we've got such busy lives, and especially, students have got extremely busy lives, how can we kind of find that quiet time and find time to do the quiet time?
It's a concept that's foreign to many students because it's not in their home. So I trick them. Doing the mandalas, for example, is a trick. And another is I'll do breathing exercises. So kids, especially kids who come from unstable homes, want to be very competitive. And I say, breathe in, breathe out, very gentle, very quiet. And they breathe in, hold their breath for 30 seconds, and then breathe out. And I say, no, your in breath has to be as much as your out breath. Let's start at 5, and let's start at 10, and then we go on. So I do this in a random way. If I'm feeling as a teacher that the mood of the class is sluggish, I might stop and do a breathing exercise. Or the mood of the class is too rambunctious, I might do a breathing exercise. And with it, I have a hand motion. It might be breathe in, breathe out. And kids love that because it's not straight cognitive transfer of knowledge. They get to use their bodies, they get to use their emotions. And when they can do that, they don't know that they're quieting down. They just are. With older kids, I do this trick where I have them take their pulse. And then I have them think of some sad thing. And I have them, or some conflict. They take their pulse again, and the pulse rate is higher. And we do our breathing exercises, take the pulse rate again. And the pulse rate is not only lower than the conflict, but it's lower than their resting pulse. So they can see its utility. So now, after a couple of times of doing it, I'm saying, we need to do, I call it the peace pulse, and they go right into it. And in a very short order, a few minutes, we change the mood. That's mindfulness.
Do you find that it can be more difficult when you've got kind of more unruly kids to try and get them to do this? How do you manage to get them to do it?
So in my previous job, I was a mindfulness instructor. And what the assistant head would do is give me all the friends. That was the euphemism for bad kids. So the teachers want to teach, and if someone is unruly, they'll send them to the office. The head doesn't want to deal with them because they're dealing with whatever else they're dealing with. So they would send them to me. We would play games. And in short order, they would tell me what the matter was, and we would solve it together. There's a mindfulness way to solve it. So it's holistic, heart, head, hands. The problem became they would intentionally get bad, so they would come and see me because it was more fun to see me. We had to deal with that. But these kids who, let's say, come from unstable environments truly want to be stable. They don't want to be labeled as bad. And I'm saying, you can turn that around like that. There's a technique, it's a secret. But if I tell you, you got to promise not to tell anybody. Of course, they tell everybody, which is a way I propagated mindfulness.
That's very sneaky.
Plus, I'm a very sneaky person.
So the book that you've got coming out, do you want to tell us a bit about this?
It's a book called Claim Your Light, um, guaranteeing insight for a more fulfilling life. It is a book that challenges people to live more fully. I found, much to my surprise, that after a career of being with young people of all ages, that they were much more malleable than adults. They wanted to grow. They wanted to be perceived as grown up. And I mistakenly thought adults wanted the same thing, and that wasn't the case. Perhaps their psychics had been battered and they wanted to keep a status quo. And psychologists call that a fixed mindset. So, my goal, along with my partner, Dr. Barb, was to try to bring a growth mindset to people's individual lives as well as professional lives, to get them to imagine a world that they loved and then have the courage to go get it. And that's what the book is about. It's about we call it the key three, the three elements you need to get the life that you choose and keep it and not be stuck and be happy forever after more.
So what is a growth mindset?
It's an attitude and a belief that whatever is happening can change. So oftentimes, if you have a fixed mindset, you might have the idea, well, I'm just dumb. My people are dumb. I can't do math. And then it becomes a self fulfilling prophecy. A growth mindset says everything is possible. What happens when you shut down? Now, that's the mindfulness thing. Stay in the moment. And when you have a math problem that's too difficult, what happens the moment before you give up? Now, can you extend that moment another 5 seconds? 5 becomes 10, 10 seconds. And in that interim, when you are uncomfortable, what new strategies, and we give strategies, can you do to extend, increase your capacity, that area which is making you feel vulnerable? That's growth mindset. Look at the threat, acknowledge the vulnerability, and use the techniques to grow yourself to become larger.
That's so interesting, because I think the minute just before you give up on the maths problem, when you think you can't do it, is just pure panic. So if you then stretch that out, what on earth do you do? I think I'd just be more panicked.
I'll give a story. I had a classroom that was top heavy with boys, more boys than girls. I think there might have only been 4 girls. And these boys were exceedingly competitive. And that competition came out when we did math. Who could finish the math problems first? So I would teach the concept, we would go over it as a class, and I would give them their homework, which was guaranteed to allow them to finish half of the assignment, the rest being homework. But they pushed real hard so they would finish all, so they wouldn't have homework. Meanwhile, the girls were on problem 2 or 3 and feeling terribly besieged. So I went over to them and I'm saying, do you want to beat the boys? And they would look at me and said, fairly? I said, yes, fairly. And I said, do a problem and let me be your guide. I'll be behind you. You need to talk out loud what's going on. And by doing so, and I think girls are much more willing to share that internal process than boys, they told me where they were stuck. And I said, oh no, go this way, not that way. They said, oh, fine. And then there was the moment when the girls finished before the boys, and it was hallelujah, and there was bedlam, and I had a new problem.
It sounds so interesting, this whole concept of, because I think we tend not to look in, we tend to look out. So actually saying, if you look inwards, you can experience kind of more success and a greater happiness in life. in some ways it seems counterintuitive. How could you overcome that kind of view of things? Is it just by practicing techniques?
This might sound terribly unprofessional, but one of my key beliefs as a teacher is to have fun. I don't think teachers or students have fun in school. So I was in one class, I was a guest lecturer, and I was in a gifted class. And these students were extraordinarily competitive. They were 2 years above their level. That's what they needed to do to get in. But in some ways, they weren't children. They were just these automaton robots. And I was doing something that was very difficult for them to do. It was a problem that was beyond their means. And I said, get with a partner to help you. And they were very afraid of doing that because then they would look bad in front of the partner. So I could feel the tension building in a class. And all of a sudden, I started to sing. Now, you must know I have a frog's voice. It's a horrible singing voice. And I said, could anyone do better? And it was a tune that was popular. And the girls started, and then the boys started. And all of a sudden, the teacher next door came and said, could you keep it down? It's quite loud. And I said, okay, now let's go back to that problem. Boom, they solved it. The mentality they had, a fixed mindset, I've got to do this and do this quickly, was not working. Well, I can't tell them change your mindset. That doesn't mean anything to them. But I changed the process and we started singing. We changed the reality. We were more in the moment. I was having them acknowledge their discomfort. Then we went, and the problem was quite simple when you looked at it from a different perspective. Then we had a lovely discussion about perspective taking. So changing something that doesn't work to what does work.
So perspective, how important is that to staying in the moment? Because I can't stay in the moment. I try and stay in the moment and my mind's everywhere straight away as soon as I try and get in the moment.
If I was to give a quick and dirty definition, mindfulness has two equal yet competing entities. One is staying in the moment, be here now, with all of yourself, your mental self, your emotional self, your physical self. And the second is equanimity, which is nothing more than just noticing what's going on. It's not what I want or what I don't want. It's just being curious about what is happening. So when my mind is going this way and that way, I'll do a meditation, although I won't call it that. I'll call it a breathing. And for the little kids, it's 30 seconds. And for the older kids, it's a minute. And they are to be attendant to two things: breathing in, out, conscious breathing. But also, I tell them you're going to be interrupted. And there's three demons. There's the demon of thought, the demon of feeling, or the demon of sensation. I'm thirsty, I'm hungry, whatever. Whenever one of those come up, you're to label it thought or feeling or sensation. You don't have to tell me what it is. Now you need to say it out loud, quietly. All right, let's begin. Go. Breath in, breath out. After about 10 seconds, I'll hear thought, thought, feeling, feeling. But then as the time continues, that popcorn sense of being invaded ebbs and it's quieter. Time is up, and I say, now how do you feel? And they say, much better. So I've done a quick and dirty meditation without labeling it as such. It works terrifically before a high emotional time, like before lunchtime, before recess time, before school's out time, to calm them down.
I'm going to try that. That's how I've not managed to do it yet, where I'm not everywhere. So I'm going to try this technique. So we're coming to the end of the interview. Would you like to tell people where they can find you on the internet and give a bit of information about your new book that's coming out?
Sure. My last name is Benenson. It's like a law firm, Ben and Son. And my email is Benenson, B-E-N again, S-O-N, 2700 at Comcast.net. And the book, which is now featured on Amazon and Barnes and Noble, is called Claim Your Light by Dr. Wayne Benenson and Dr. Barb Hewson. It's very short, 90 pages, that's all.
And I'll be listing all this below so that you can click straight through and get that book. And Dr. Barb we've had on a couple of times, so you know that this is going to be an amazing book. So don't forget to click through and see all the different amazing things that are going on. And it's been a pleasure to have you on the podcast today, Dr. Wayne.
Thank you. I've enjoyed myself thoroughly.